Hi guys, we're gonna be doing a quick and short Path of Exile 2 guide for Pathfinder. This is specifically for poison build Pathfinder and how to level through from Axe 1 to 3. I'm sure if you're new, it's quite challenging to spec out your character to deal really good damage early game. So this is a guide for you. The first skill we're going to be looking at and what we're going to be using for most of the early game will be Poison Burst Arrow. Poison Burst Arrow has a really good attack damage base. I can't really remember fully, but I think it was around 55% at level 1 or even higher than that one. I can't remember it, I don't have it, so I cannot show you. The reason why we're gonna spec out on this one is that it does two types of damage, the arrow and the poison burst. You have to remind that poison burst doesn't hit, it's a dot effect. It's gonna burst and it deals area of effect damage and chaos damage. You have the projectile here for the arrow, and this one does the area of effect damage. When speccing out your character in the early game, we need to be mindful not to decrease the DPS for your main arrow damage. So this is this one. If you were to use Poison Burst Arrow and you put Chain, what will happen is that it reduces a lot of your damage. So it says here supported skills deals 50% less with his, and this basically causes your character to suffer from the reduction of the damage in the early game. Also the same thing for Scatter. If we look at Scatter Shots, supported skills deals 20% less damage and fires 2 additional projectiles and has 20% less attack speed. It significantly lowers your attack speed and fairly lowers your damage, and in the early game you don't want that. So that's why we're going to be using Martial Tempo. This allows you to attack a little bit faster than normal. So this is how Poison Burst Arrow looks like without any skill gems. Now we're going to be adding the Martial Tempo, and let's see the difference. Now this is now with the Martial Tempo. The next support gem you should be adding to this one is Concentrated Effect. And if we look at the Poison Burst Arrow, the base area of effect is 2 meters. When we add this, it's now going to be 1.4 meters and then increases your damage for the poison burst. The reason why we're gonna put this one is that it doesn't suffer our damage by a lot. It doesn't reduce our arrow damage, and there's not much negative effect in terms of area of effect and other things. We could have used burst in play, but we're not going to use it in this one because we need this in another skill. The next skill you're going to be prioritizing is Vine Arrow. This is going to be your utility support skill. It's for you to slow your enemies down before you have an encounter with an enemy. There's a few things you can do with this one. If we look at the description, by default it slows the enemy by 40%, and you can see here that it's basically 20% for unique monsters. This does chaos damage and poisons the enemy. This is going to be our primary utility skill, and this is how it looks like. Normally it just shoots out 1 pustules, but because I can't remove my bow, this is how it shows up. What we're going to add in this one is we're gonna put Maim effect. It's gonna slow down our enemies by a lot. Maim is an additional 30% from enemies. So from 40% it will now become 70%, but because this is only affecting 50% when it's a unique enemy, it's only affecting uniques by 35%. The next support gem that we can add to this one is Encumbrance. Basically it improves the effect of slow by 15%. And if we look at the stats, it now deals 46% slow from the vines, plus an additional 30% from main. The next skill that we're gonna add is Toxic Growth. Toxic Growth allows you to shoot out 8 pustules that's gonna explode when it receives any poison damage. So this is how the skill looks like, and this is how you're going to trigger the skills. One thing you need to note about this one is that if there's no any obstacle on the line of sight, it's not going to trigger the pustules. It will just shoot through the pustules. So you need an enemy to trigger it, or an obstacle to trigger it, like shooting it on the wall. The support skill gems that we can add to this one is Bursting Plague. This basically allows 200% of our poison as additional poison damage. So how this interacts is that it gets the damage from the stored poison and then adding a 200% damage to this one as an additional poison effect. The next support gem that we can add to this is Comorbidity. Basically, it adds an additional 1 poison stack on the skill. So instead of 1 poison, it now deals 2 poisons at the expense of less poison duration. But there's not much to worry about poison duration, is because it's good enough to compensate with the duration loss. So in the early games, from Act 1 to Act 2, what your main skills and how you're gonna play the game is mainly by firing out Vine Pustules, then you cast the Toxic Growth, and then shoot and explode your enemies. And this is a really good combo in the first few acts until we go to higher acts and get better skill gems. I'm gonna demonstrate this to you how it works.
Grow.
The next skill that we're gonna be getting is Gas Arrow. Gas Arrow is basically a gas that allows you to poison enemies in the area, and it deals around 200% of your damage. It does not hit, but it affects poison effect on an area. This is how it looks like. The key thing about this skill is the explosion modifier. So Gas Arrow does 2 types of damage. One is from the poison cloud and the other is the explosion. And the key thing you need to look at why this is very good is because the base damage of what this skill does. Poison cloud does 221% of your base damage, and the explosion does around 564 of your base damage. This could be lower depending on the skill level, but this is really good. It multiplies your base damage to 5. And how to use the skill, we need to add Flame Wall. Flame Wall is basically a firewall that allows any projectiles to pass through it to be imbued with fire. And you need intelligence in your character to be able to use this. At least 40 int so that you can grab this spell. And this is how you use these to use it as a combo. First you put the gas, then you put Flame Wall in front of you or on the gas, and then you fire. So you can see when using the Flame Wall, it adds fire imbuement on your projectile. This combination only triggers if an enemy is hit. So it doesn't trigger if you're just standing and shooting randomly. The support gems that we're going to be adding to these two are Scatter Shot. It does reduce our damage, but it gives us an additional 2 projectiles, which scales really well with the explosion. We lose 20% damage in total, but also receive an additional 1100%. Another skill that we can add to Gas Arrow is Corrosion. This now allows you to armor break your enemy for an additional damage. If you're using Corrosion, you can use Exploit Weakness with your Toxic Growth, replacing Concentrated Effect. Now that we have the Gas Arrow skill, we can move the Concentrated Effect to Gas Arrow, making the damage bigger. So if we remove this, it only deals around this amount. If we add this one, it now does a little bit more. It also increases our explosion damage by 40%. So this becomes our main skill that allows us to kill loads of enemies. Because we remove this from poison burst arrow, we need to replace it with another support skill gem. And it's up to you what you're gonna use or replace it with. Alternatively, you can use corrosion in gas arrow, and this is really good because the effect of poison from the gas arrow is really quick and swift. You can easily break their armor. And then we're gonna combine exploit weakness, which consumes the broken armor to deal more damage in another skill. For flame wall, all we need to add is additional duration to the skill effect, which is persistence, and arcane tempo with an additional 25% on cast speed. The reason why we need arcane tempo is that it reduces your cast time by a lot, especially when the hordes of enemies are rushing towards you. But you can alternatively use fortress, which basically creates a flame wall as a circle instead of a line. And then you can stand in the middle. The reason why I don't pick this one early game is because of how slow you cast it, and then when enemies are rushing towards you at a little bit higher levels, it becomes an inconvenience. So best to stick with faster cast time with the arcane tempo. But if you have the free linked gems, then you can add all three. Once you have some currency to increase your gem sockets into 3, this is when things becomes really good. So we know that we're doing loads of damage from gas arrow by using corrosion and utilizing exploit weakness as a combo. You can now add back concentrated effect to gas arrow. And here you can use other skills like fire penetration, which further increases our explosion damage, but you need 25 strength to utilize both. So I'm gonna show you how the skill interacts and looks like when fighting against enemies.
Nowhere to run.
Clips of me fighting against bosses with this build. Not exactly the same support gems, but using the same skills for you to...
The demon of Atzoatl has finally come for me. Inevitable.
Cultivate.
Sacrifice is the only path to survival. Inferno! 5 moves ahead. This ends now! I can't give up. I must save my people.
You know why we're here. It happened. It cannot be stopped.
No, I will succeed. There is no escape. I cannot allow you to interfere. The end of the world is nigh. I will crush you. I've been preparing for you for years. Full power. Now you're within my grasp. Let's see you survive this. I plan for every contingency. Full power. Fatal ambition. This is not over yet. One death is nothing for the greater good. Face the might of the Baal. How foolish. Burn you alive! No! Do not fail me. Not now!
And how to create a weapon, make sure you just get dual string bow in the early acts and then spec as much physical damage to that weapon, because poison heavily relies on physical damage, and also your explosion is based on physical damage. So the more physical damage that we have, the better the damage output we get. But for the runes, basically I just add iron rune, which increases the physical damage, and this, so we have this bow. It would be best and ideal if you get an additional +2 to projectiles, but gearing in Path of Exile 2 in the early stages, it's a bit hard, so just get whatever you want as long as it is increased physical damage and allows you to scale your physical damage to higher levels. Next is our passive skills. With how we spec out our class, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this path for projectile damage. What I normally did before was go here and then I also spec out to this, but I have to change it because I have to compensate with my stat to make this guide. With how we spec out the character with this passive is normally we follow this line for the projectile damage. You can also get these two passives here, but I remove them to compensate with my current attribute shortage. But ideally you have to go through here, these two, then go here. Once you are here, you can apply whatever stat you need to level for your skills. You can either put intelligence or dexterity, and then you go here and also get these two, because this gives you 10 to strength and it allows you to gain a flash charges at 0.1 second. And this will be your first poison damage node, which is very good and increases your poison damage in the early stage. You then move here to get the other tree for the poison damage. This is poison skill duration and an additional poison to your stack. Then you move here to allocate different kinds of attribute. You can change this however you want depending on your skill gem requirement. And here you need a jewel to be able to utilize this one. For most part you won't be able to use this socket here, and if you're lucky you can add whatever jewel you have here. This is where you should be prioritizing your skill tree. These three notables are very good. This basically gives you projectile damage, and then this one allows you to add more pierce to your projectile without having to spend or add a skill support gem. So this one, pierce, and then pierce, and this one projectiles fork. So what forks mean is that when you hit an enemy, it splits into two. And if you have this one, it's 100%. And this one is optional, but basically when your arrow misses or pierces through and hits a terrain, there's a chance that it bounces back. But this is basically additional damage if it happens. So this is the first line that you should be prioritizing, including these two that is missed out. So from here, here, and then here to the bow projectile part. Next will be speccing out to this. Attributes in Path of Exile 2 is very important because in the early game you don't have gear that allows you to get more attributes. So I just changed this one recently to add this, and this basically gives me 33 dexterity. Next is you're gonna go here and then go right. We're gonna leave this last because this is not very important, because what we're chasing after is these nodes here. This is the poison nodes, and once you reach here, you basically get this poison duration, but what we're interested is mainly this one. So it adds an additional poison stack to your build. These two you can skip because we don't really deal with anything that needs poison and hit. So we're gonna go here and go there. So once there, you should be around 40 plus level and can go anywhere else. So these will be your primary skill tree when leveling up. You can get basically this one, low tolerance, which adds 60% damage to poison effect when the enemy isn't poisoned. So these are your primary skill tree to spec out during leveling in Acts 1 to 3. For your Ascendancy, what you need to do is to add this one first. This improves your damage by a lot, and any enemy that you kill using poison, it will spread the highest poison damage to the surrounding enemy. If you're able to beat the second Ascendancy, what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to pick this one. This basically allows you to double the number of poison that you have, and from picking this one, you have a total of 3, and you have another 1 from the skill, so that's 4. The base one is 1. So if you have this node for your Ascendancy, that's basically 8 in total for now. And maybe you can get another one if there's a unique item that allows you to get another poison stack. So once you have reached level 50 or something, what we're gonna do is we're gonna spec out to this area here and then just get this one. This heals you for 2% every enemies you kill, and this is really good. And from there you can spec out anywhere in the tree, however you build your character. And that's it for me, guys, and I hope you like my video and not die a lot and speed through the campaign from Acts 1 to 3. Stay sane, exile. Bye bye.